You got Mac here on Birds 365, a Monday kickoff to the week. We're lucky enough to get Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports on with us. Jeff, here's my first question. Which has a better chance of happening in the next 48 hours? Joshua Harris sitting down, having a meaningful conversation with Roger Goodell about buying the Commanders, or Joshua Harris sitting down to let Sixers Nation know Doc Rivers' services are no longer needed? Where will Josh Harris's attention be?
Well, I think right now he cares more about the Commanders, but I will say this: he probably should be doing both. I'm not ready to fully blame Doc Rivers for all this shit, although he will get fired. He should get fired, but I'm still frustrated that
players.
Exactly. I'm still frustrated over just the lack of self-awareness Joel Embiid and James Harden have toward the task at hand. It's incredible how they play in a city like Philadelphia that has Bryce Harper, that has Jalen Hurts. I mean, Bryce Harper's fighting a no-name pitcher who's only been in Major League Baseball for 5 months in a 4-0 game in the middle of May, and Joel Embiid sitting here sulking over another second-round playoff exit in the biggest game of his life. I'll never understand it.
Yeah. I think, and Jeff's a big Sixers guy. I think it's a good thing a lot of Sixers fans had to have a come to Jesus moment about Joel Embiid because he's tremendously talented. He's tremendously gifted. But how do you win the way they play basketball in the modern NBA? That's the question. That's the question that needs to be answered. And too few people were willing to ask it because, oh, he's the MVP, he's this, he's that. Yeah, but is that the goal? 50 win? Because you're going to win 50. He's going to be in the MVP conversation. But until he accepts a lesser role late in games, what can Doc Rivers do? I mean, one of the things that frustrates me, and you're a Penn State guy as well, I always go back to Penn State, Ohio State, because I got in a back and forth with a pretty famous college football writer. And it was that Trace McSorley, you probably remember it. I think it was a 4th and 4, 4th and 5 type play. So games on the line.
4th and 5. Yeah. I know exactly where you're going.
And they ran an RPO and it got blown up. And everybody's like, I'm like, that's what James Franklin practices all day, every day. That's their bread and butter. And then in the biggest spot against a team that they're trying to upset and is probably better and more talented, you want them to pull out some Bill Walsh masterpiece out of his you-know-what. Doesn't work that way. So bringing it back to the Sixers, Jeff, you can't play one way the entire season and then say, oh, in the biggest moment, completely change. They built their whole team around this particular player. He can't close games. Something's got to change.
And that's what's frustrating about it. So one of the arguments I get into a lot of people is, well, Jokic is a winning player. It's this whole Jokic and Embiid thing. By the way, I love both of them. They're great players. But I'm like, hold on a second. Jokic has a generational type player in Jamal Murray, too, who's pretty good. And you got to worry about stopping Jamal Murray. And if you watch Nuggets games, the offense actually flows through Murray, but you have Jokic there to make the plays he makes. And Jokic is a 2-time MVP for a reason. And is Jokic 1B? In the playoffs, he is. And you see these triple-double. Embiid needs to be a 1B, but the thing is, I don't think Embiid has that killer instinct that Jokic had. Jokic says, we're going to finish off this team, and I'm going to put up 39, 12, and 10, or whatever he puts come hell to high water. And Joel Embiid just rather blame Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey.
It's always somebody else's fault.
It's always somebody.
By the way, I'll ask Jeff Kerr and Jody McDonald this. How can you let Marcus Smart, how could you let Al Horford, never mind Marcus Smart or Malcolm Brogdon earlier in the series, push you off your spots? Forget about Brogdon and Smart. He's getting the ball 16 feet away from the basket with Marcus Smart on him. That's embarrassing.
And you let Marcus Smart flop. That's the worst part. Like, you should just run him over and dunk the ball every single time.
Shaq would have. They would never do that. They would never do that. They feel comfortable enough. hey, Malcolm Brogdon, go check Embiid for 3 minutes. He's not going to do anything. Smart, go waste a foul.
Yeah, the problem is he's not Jokic, and at times he tries to be Jokic, and he's just not Jokic. He doesn't have the passing ability that Jokic has, so they do play him a little bit further away from the bat. You talk about the NBA not being what it used to be. Playing back to the basket center doesn't happen anywhere. A couple of possessions a game, that's it, and nobody would want Embiid to do that.
By the way, Jody, I saw Marcus Smart do it. There are guys who can back people.
You saw
down,
Marcus Smart do what? Play continuously back to the basket?
No, he would post people up. He would post up Maxey when he got him in a spot, and
the post up game still exists. The post up game still exists.
How many possessions a game is
a handful of possessions a game, but a handful of meaningful possessions. That's the point. Guys can do it. I agree with you. It's mainly become a 3-point shooting game, but there are guys who post up and guys who do it well. I go back to Mark Jackson. He was doing the game play by play. He was tremendous at that as a guard.
Yeah, it's 20 years ago now.
Used to post up Allen Iverson all the time. Even guards can do it.
Jason Tatum does it.
Yeah, Tatum does it. Yeah, Tatum does it all the time. There are guys who can do it, Jody. It's not as impactful as it once was, but there are guys who do it.
A handful of possessions a game. That's
meaningful
all it is, and that's why Embiid likes to get out onto the perimeter because he gets his hand. Embiid gets his handful of post-up plays a game. He's pretty damn successful with it, but he's got to be able to do more than he did. Certainly,
that series changed when Joe Mazzulla decided to play Robert Williams in that starting lineup. And I thought the Sixers spacing was going to be tremendous. But Doc Rivers never made the adjustment. It's Boston basically dared Joel Embiid to make those elbow jumpers and PJ Tucker wide open in the corner, and they just couldn't fall. And
by the way, that's another issue I have. If he wants to be out on the wing, great. But be decisive. Take the elbow jumper. Take it.
It was there. It was there. I don't know what happened.
But he's always hesitating. Then he puts the ball on the floor. Then he's a turnover waiting to happen. Yeah, there's a lot of issues there. A lot of issues that go far beyond Doc Rivers.
And it was always more than Ben Simmons. I know he was a scapegoat. I'm not a Ben Simmons fan. He's another loser, losing attitude. I saw his Instagram post yesterday. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, shut up. You're making $72 million on your couch. You don't even want to play basketball. But I just got tired of the whole, if Jimmy Butler was here, they didn't win with Jimmy Butler either. Jimmy Butler had his problems in the fourth quarter of that game against the Toronto Raptors. There's been one constant through this entire thing, and that's Joel Embiid.
Yeah, but if Jimmy Butler takes out the Celtics this next round, you're going to have to listen to it again, Kerr. We should have kept Jimmy Butler. If he does what the Sixers couldn't do, then you got to acknowledge that.
Yeah, that Heat team is terrible. That is a bad Heat team. I'm telling you right now. I think the Celtics beat that team.
Heat team that's in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Because they got a draw. They got a lucky draw. They beat.
Hey, you know who got a lucky draw? The Sixers, but they couldn't take advantage of it because they would be, if they just close out at home, they're playing those Miami Heat to go to the NBA Finals.
And I think they
didn't take advantage.
I'll say that the four
best teams didn't take advantage of it.
The four best teams in the NBA were, in no order, Denver, Milwaukee, Boston, the Sixers. Two of them played each other in the second round.
That's the way the regular season went, but we're finding out the postseason is different. All right, I answered the Joshua Harris question to get your comment about the Commanders, not to get off onto a Sixers tangent. I've been reading that the way the NFL usually does business on taking new owners in, the benchmarks they have to hit, number of partners, number of cash, amount to cover salaries and put money in escrow to give guaranteed contracts and the like. The group that's buying the Commanders aren't necessarily checking all the boxes, that there are some financial questions, but they're so desperate to get Dan Snyder out the door that they're willing to compromise on some of these situations with the new group looking to buy the Commanders. Are you hearing the same thing?
The only thing I've heard, at least from the Commanders' standpoint, is I guess Josh Harris and them are talking about potentially building a new stadium in Maryland again, which I thought that was the reason why a lot of people soured on the Commanders franchise in the first place outside of Dan Snyder is they did not want to be in Maryland. They want to be. I've heard personally that Northern Virginia is a very likely destination, or they would welcome Northern Virginia will welcome them. But where in Northern Virginia is going to be the question. That's where I'm curious to see when this sale is finalized. How quickly can they get out of FedEx Field? How quickly can they get a new practice facility and training facility? I think that's goal number one for the Commanders outside of getting rid of Dan Snyder. But I don't know, Jody. I kind of agree with you. I feel like it's not like when the Walton family bought the Broncos. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two issues. What Jody brought up is part of it. They just want to get Daniel Snyder out there, but there aren't a lot of people. There aren't a lot of families like the Walton family. So when you start to get up at $6 billion, people are going to have to take on partners, even really, really rich people, and they're going to have to change the way they do business because there's not going to be enough people to own these teams because there's only so many Jeff Bezoses of the world. And that's part of the problem. These organizations, they're getting too expensive, and very few people are financially well-heeled enough to do it by themselves or with very few minority partners. Josh Harris, perfect example. The guy's extraordinarily rich, but he's not rich enough.
John, do you think Josh Harris might sell one of his teams to help pay for the Commanders?
Yeah, I don't think he cares. I know a lot of people are, how could you own the Commanders and own the Sixers, or own the Devils and own the Sixers? He doesn't care. He's trying to make money. And obviously the NFL is a better way to do that than the NBA or the NHL. So if he needs to, yeah. I don't think it would necessarily be a bad thing, but you always have, it could be worse. I always say about Josh, he's not a good owner, but he's not a bad owner. And
he's better than Daniel Snyder.
Yeah, you can get a bad owner. Exactly. Perfect example, Daniel Snyder. I wanted to run what I want to run what I don't know if you saw what Ryan Poles said about Jalen Carter on Chicago radio, Jeff. I thought it was interesting because I thought he told the truth, and it was basically I pulled up the quote, so I want to read it to you guys and get both your thoughts. I will say that our culture is important, and this is Ryan Poles. I'll say that we know where our roster is right now and what it can handle, what it can't handle. I think that's part of being intelligent in this space, is knowing your locker room and where it's at. I'm happy we made the decision that we made, specifically on Jalen. I think he went to a fantastic place that has their cement dry and their foundation. A lot of Eagles fans took this as an affront. I thought he was complimenting.
It's a compliment.
It's a compliment.
That's a stone cold compliment to the Eagles.
Yeah.
In fact, this is I thought, just based on you reading that. So what I'm getting from Ryan Poles is we are not in that position to draft a player.
Yeah,
like
we're
Jalen
not strong
Carter.
enough to take a potential issue on.
Yeah, but the Eagles
which is
are
a compliment. Yes.
Yeah, it's a compliment to the Eagles and what they're doing. I think that's why a lot of people love the Eagles doing what they did and getting Jalen Carter, because their locker room is built for that. I mean, you're seeing that. I just talked to Kaylee Ringo over the weekend, and I can't believe how mature this guy is and what he's been through.
Yeah. So Nolan Smith too. All this, except for Jalen. All the Georgia guys are like unbelievable. It's a
crazy
testament to Kirby Smart, N'Kobe Dean, Jordan Davis as well. Jalen Carter, I'm talking about, by the way, not Jalen Hurts. Jalen Carter, I think there's some maturity issues. I think that's fair to say, but he's 22 years old.
He's in the right situation too. He's with his guys, like guys he trusts, and it's going to make life for him in the NFL easier. That's why I love the Nolans. They were able to get him and Kaylee Ringo, and he already knows Jordan Davis. He knows the Kobe Dean. I mean, I think he's going to be fine here. I really do. There's going to be obviously stories that come out just based on what happened in January, but that's life in the NFL.
Well, he's already got civil suits, and it's not going away anytime soon. But I think the Eagles are strong enough to handle it, and other teams, like if I'm Chicago and I have the number 1 overall pick, and none of this happens, I'm taking Jalen Carter at number 1. And then they get on the back end, they trade down because they decide they want to keep their quarterback. So they don't want a quarterback. That makes sense. Then they get another shot at him because they could have taken the kid at 9.
That's what I thought they were going to do. I'm like, well, we just traded down from 1 to 9. We probably would have taken them at 1.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised they kind of let the Eagles trade up 1 spot together. But hey, they had their plans, and Ryan Poles, it's an honest answer. It's not an insult that Jalen Carter, the Eagles, or anybody.
Yeah, I they're very honest. They're not in a position to take him.
Here's one of my concerns about Jalen Carter. And again, I'm going apples and oranges, and I'm dragging the NBA back into it, so I apologize in advance. John Morant was the 2nd pick in the draft, and the Memphis Grizzlies thought they got a generational talent that was going to lift the organization.
They did get one.
And it did. They did. And they got tremendous immediate success because of it. Now the kid's NBA career sits in the balance because not only did he make a mistake, he doubled down on the mistake after coming out and said, I've learned my lesson and take all responsibilities, and he does the same exact thing again.
Didn't the Grizzlies ban the guy he had the Instagram post with from their games because he shot a laser pointer at someone?
They didn't ban him from his car where they shot the second Instagram post. So you can only do so much if you're the team. It comes back to the young man himself. And John Morant proved that he doesn't want to exercise the problems that he has in his life. We don't know if Jalen Carter will do that or not. We certainly believe that's the case. We hope that's the case. We believe that the very good Eagle locker room with veteran leaders will try and guide him in that direction. I'm sure the Memphis Grizzlies had people that they thought were helping guide John Morant too. And now they're going to be without his services for however many long.
But I also think the Eagles get the benefit of the doubt here because of the culture they've installed. And that's where the Ryan Poles comments come in. We believe they can handle this. They believe they can handle this. They told you this, John McMullen. They told me this. They told us all this. Like, they're willing to take this on. And
to Jody's point, they might be wrong. And it might not work out because, it really is ultimately up to the person because you can't follow and keep tabs on somebody 24/7.
That's what you're talking about.
Especially from June to late July? Those 6 weeks are crucial.
So ultimately, I'm not saying it couldn't go wrong. It could go wrong. But my overriding point in the Jalen Carter situation, and there's a lot of teams that don't feel comfortable taking on that challenge. The Eagles do. And if it works, it could be a home run. And other teams just can't do that. They can't take the swing. If you don't get in the batter's box to take the swing, you can't hit the home run. And there's certain teams that can't even get in the batter's box. I think that's a big advantage to the Eagles.
What was the Big Daddy Graham slogan? Jody Mack can't win if you don't play.
Yeah, Big Daddy used to say that all the time. Which, as John just said, you give the Eagles credit because they're always looking for a game. They're ready to take some chances. Like now, if it works, it works. Great. That's a major advantage for the Eagles. But if the young man blows up, then we're going to go, you took too many swings early. You should have taken a couple pitches before you got back in and swung for the fences. Jalen Carter's a swing for the fence, and it's either going to be a 3-run homer or it's going to be an easy out because he's not capable of getting on the field. All right, Jeff, we haven't talked to you at all about the Eagles schedule. John and I both agree people make too much out of it, but it's the talking point for right now in the season with most of free agency done and before camps open up. Do you like the way the Eagles schedule lays out this year for potential success for the Eagles?
McMullen, weren't you the one who said they'll start 5-0?
They should, yeah.
They should, yeah. I agree with you. I think people are making way too big of a deal the first week. Oh, they're playing the Patriots on Tom Brady, whatever day it is, retirement day, or
I don't like that spot, but I think it, and Jody knows from last year, I was talking that up for weeks. I thought it was going to be a tougher game than people thought. I ended up right, but they persevered and got out of Detroit with a win. Same thing here with New England. Look, I don't like to open up anybody's home opener because everybody's fired up. There's a little more juice, a little more unless Joel Embiid's going to play. Guys are going to fight to the last minute and scratch and claw. But ultimately, the Eagles got significantly more talent, and they should be able to persevere and get out of there with a win. And then I think all of a sudden, if they do that, then you can kind of turn the corner. Minnesota's not going to be an issue on Thursday night. Tampa might be the worst team on the schedule or second worst, Arizona. Washington's going to be terrible early with Sam Howell. The Rams are in complete rebuilding mode. And then I think you might have some issues with Jody's Jets and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. And you get the gauntlet. The gauntlet's coming. And I mean, look at this, though. You got Cowboys before the bye. And you got Chiefs after the bye. Oh, by the way, Andy Reid's on the bye when he plays the Eagles, too. So I don't like that. Then you got Buffalo on a short week. I don't care if it's at home or not. The Bills are still really good. And you got the 49ers who make more excuses than the Sixers, quite frankly. Then you got
Dallas at Dallas.
Dallas at Dallas.
And then Seattle.
At Seattle, where they haven't won since, I think, 2008. Whew, man.
By the way, Jeff, I think that's the toughest spot in the whole schedule at Seattle.
I agree with you. They don't win there. They just don't. Oh, and Seattle's pretty good, and they got better. I will agree with John Lynch. He said, we're trying to pay attention to that other team in the NFC West. And he mentioned Seattle later, but he said, did you guys see what the Seahawks did this all season? Like, they had a really good offseason. And now they got Devin Witherspoon on their team, and they got Jackson Smith-Njigba. I don't know why they I get why they drafted I can never pronounce his name.
Zach Charbonnet in the second round.
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet. Thank you. So I don't know why they drafted in the second round, but him and Kenneth Walker behind that offensive line, that's scary. I mean, I think they're a team that could win 10, 11 games this year.
By the way, when did they rename Quest Field Lumen Field? I missed that
4 years ago.
Was it? Shoot.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with those.
Yeah, they lost the Quest Field. I guess it was like a 18, 19, 20-year deal or something.
Completely lost that one. Completely.
No, it wasn't.
I call it the bird's nest.
I call it the home of the 12th man because they did lay claim to that pretty early.
Lumen Field.
Lumen Field. Well, by the way, God, what is the lamest sports stadium name?
Oh, there's so many. There's so
Lone
many.
Depot Park's a good one. I think that's a lame name.
The Miami Arena they just renamed again.
Oh, FTX Arena.
No, it's something. Isn't it something else now?
Is it Crypto.com? It's
no, Crypto.com is LA.
Yeah, that's LA. I still call that the Staples Center.
Right.
So do I.
Toenailed. It's Crypto Center.
So do I.
We can't look down our nose at other cities because they've changed the name of the building where the Flyers and the Sixers play about 5 times.
I still call it
that's what happens when banks get involved. Banks get eaten by other banks, and they just keep changing the names of the arena.
Yeah. So Jeff brought up the Miami because we're going to see it, the Heat. Well, I guess that FTX went under, so now it's the Kaizia Center, whatever the hell that is. Yeah, I can't keep up with them.
I can't hear. Just keep one name. Well, you know what? I still can't call it MetLife Stadium. I know it's MetLife Stadium, but to me, it's the Meadowlands.
Yeah, it was nice when it just.
All right, speaking of MetLife Stadium, I wanted to ask you this, Jeff, because you stay on top of the entire division, Mr. NFC East. Somebody pointed this out to me, and we talk about the way the schedule lays out, advantage, disadvantage, and certain media members here in Philadelphia think the Eagles were somehow screwed and or disrespected by their schedule. I don't get that a little bit.
No, I don't either. By the way, the Eagles are really good. I'm not even worried about the schedule, to be honest with you.
Yeah, same here. But the Giants, after they open up at home against Dallas, who, oh, by the way, we know they have problems with, kind of like the Eagles. They can't beat Dallas. They can't beat the Eagles. 7 out of their next 10 games on the road, that's pretty tricky. Now, if you get through that and I'd even take 6-5 if I were the Giants. If you get through that first 11 at 6-5, it lightens up on the back end, but maybe you don't get to it. Maybe you're 4-7, and then that's a big time problem. If there's any team that kind of got the short end of the schedule, I was surprised they laid the Giants schedule out the way they did. 7 out of 10 games on the road.
Well, I think they got a bad hand in. They get to play the Eagles 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season. I mean, they can't beat the Eagles to save their lives right now. And you're going to play them in Lincoln Financial Field on Christmas, then you potentially might be playing for a playoff spot in Week 18. I don't care if it's at home or not. Like, the Eagles might be playing for something then too. And you're right about the whole 7 of 10 thing. By the way, Joe, did you see your Jets play 10 of the first 15 at MetLife Stadium?
Oh, they're heavy at the beginning of the season, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now granted, one of the Jets who's I guess the Giants are technically the road team for Giants Jets this year.
It's a Jet home game, I think so, yes.
Okay. So was it like 7 of their first 9 or I gotta look this up again, but yeah, I don't know. The Giants could be that candidate that if you just look at the early part of their schedule, they could be the candidate instead of starting 6-2 like they did last year. They could start 3-5, 3-6. It's very. I think the Giants are a better team, but I think they're going to take a step back this year.
Speaking of the Giants, in disrespect, Pro Football Focus, number 1 roster in the NFL, your Philadelphia Eagles. Number 6, Dallas Cowboys. Number 17, the Washington Commanders. Number 23, the New York Giants.
They have the Commanders roster is better than the Giants roster.
They do have a good roster, but they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
That's their
Do you think that's too much disrespect for the New York Football Giants?
I do. I would put the Giants at least the top 20. I mean, but I still don't understand New York's philosophy this offseason. You just lost 38-7 to the Eagles in a game you weren't even competitive in. You were kind of stuck in that purgatory. Yet, let's franchise tag Saquon. Let's sign Daniel Jones to a big contract. Let's not really improve the wide receiver position enough. Now, they did get Darren Waller, but Darren Waller's been hurt a lot. Yeah. I don't think they've improved the offensive line much, if at all. I think their defense could be a little bit better, but I don't like how they got rid of Julian Love in order to do it. I thought Julian Love had a really good year for them last year. I just don't get what they're doing there. I guess you're trying to install a culture, but are you really are you trying to tie yourselves in the NFL purgatory?
I think they were taken by surprise, to be honest, how well Daniel Jones played last season. And now they got to pay him. And I mean, what's the upside there? I think that's the problem. That's the going rate. That's the cost of doing business. I get why they had to do it, but I don't necessarily want to do that. That is a difficult decision if you're Joe Shane, the GM. Do you just say, you know what? This guy's not good enough. We made the playoffs. How do you sell that to the fan base? You win a playoff game. How do you sell that and say, oh, we're moving on from Daniel Jones?
The worst thing that could happen to the Giants last year was they went 9-7-1. They probably would have been better off winning 4 or 5 games last year.
Yeah, that's my point. I don't know how, again, young GM, how does he sell that? Even if he wants to do that. I don't know if he can. That's,
Especially with that fan base.
Yeah.
I mean, that fan base still thinks that they're a touchdown away from being the Eagles. It's weird.
Yeah, Daniel Jones finished ahead of Kirk Cousins in passer rating last year, which I still don't understand. Kirk Cousins had Jefferson to throw to. Who the hell was Daniel Jones throwing to last year? He did. He had a surprisingly good season, but now we'll see if it worked for them with the amount of money they got to pay him. Jeff Kerr, always a pleasure. Appreciate you jumping in. We'll get you back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for doing it today, bud.
Yep, always a pleasure, guys. A lot of Sixers. Still frustrated with Sixers today, but thank God I got the NFL to worry about.
Exactly right. We put the Sixers in the rearview mirror to cover the Philadelphia Eagles, which we do here every day on Birds 365. And Johnny Mac and Jody Mac are coming back to put a bow on today's show.